The city was a furnace that August, the air so thick it clung to you like a lover you couldn't shake. I'm Anna, and this isn't my story, not really. I'm just the one who saw it happen, the one who couldn't look away when the shadows turned heavy with sin. It was my friend Sophie and her husband's friend Nathan, a man with a smile like a blade and eyes that burned with secrets you wanted to unravel. Sophie was the spark, and he was the fire that consumed her. Sophie was 26, all sharp curves and restless energy, with a laugh that could pull you in and a gaze that held you there. She was married to Tom, a steady guy, the kind who built a life you could count on but forgot to light it up. They'd been together 5 years, their house a quiet suburban box, too still for a woman like her. Nathan was Tom's old college buddy, 30, with a lean frame and a voice that slid under your skin, smooth and dangerous. I saw it the first time he came over for a barbecue, the way the air shifted when he looked at her. I was there that night, dropping by to return a scarf Sophie had left at my place. The house was warm, the kind of warm that makes your skin hum, the windows open to let in the faint breeze. Sophie answered the door, her sundress loose and low, her hair spilling over her shoulders like dark honey. "Anna, you're a saint," she said, her voice light, but her eyes restless, darting toward the living room. Nathan was there, leaning against the fireplace, a beer in his hand, his shirt unbuttoned just enough to show the line of his chest. He smiled at me, slow and knowing, but it wasn't me he was after. We sat in the living room, the three of us, the hum of cicadas outside, mixing with the low thrum of tension inside. Sophie curled up on the couch, her legs tucked under her, the hem of her dress riding high on her thigh. Nathan's eyes followed, lingering on the curve of her knee, the soft skin glowing in the lamplight. I felt it then, the undercurrent sharp and electric like a wire sparking in the dark. They weren't talking much, but their silence was loud, heavy with things unsaid. I should have left, but I didn't. I stayed caught in the pull of something forbidden. Sophie laughed at something Nathan said, her head tilting back, her throat exposed. His gaze was fixed, unblinking, like a man staring at his own destruction. "Your trouble, you know that," he said, his voice low, teasing, but edged with something darker. She met his eyes, her lips parting just enough to let the moment hang. "Maybe I like trouble," she said, her voice a soft challenge, her eyes locked on his. The air shifted, grew thicker, like the moment before a spark catches fire. I shifted in my seat, my skin prickling. I wasn't supposed to see this, but I couldn't stop watching. The beer bottles emptied, and the room grew warmer, the air thick with desire. Sophie's dress slipped off one shoulder, and she didn't fix it. Nathan's voice grew softer, his words more deliberate, each one landing like a touch. "You're different tonight," he said, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees, "like you're waiting for something." Sophie's smile was slow, almost dangerous. "Maybe I am," she said, her voice a low hum, her eyes never leaving his. I felt like an intruder, but my feet wouldn't move. The night outside pulsed, but it couldn't drown out the beat of my heart. Then it happened. Sophie stood stretching her dress, riding up to show a sliver of her stomach. She crossed the room to get another beer, her hips swaying just enough to make you notice. Nathan watched her, his jaw tight, his hands flexing. When she passed him, her hand brushed his arm, accidental, or maybe not. His fingers caught hers just for a second, and I saw it, the spark, the flare of something forbidden. She didn't pull away. She stood there, her breath shallow, her eyes searching his face. "Careful, Sophie," he murmured so low I barely heard it. "You're playing with fire." She didn't answer, just let her fingers linger in his before slipping free. My heart was pounding, now my mouth dry. I knew I should say something break the spell, but I didn't. I was trapped, a witness to something I couldn't unsee. Sophie sat back down closer to him, this time her knee brushing his. The room felt smaller, the walls closing in the air, thick with want. I mumbled some excuse about a call and stood to leave, but their eyes were on each other, not me. As I reached the door, I glanced back. Nathan's hand was on her wrist, his thumb tracing slow circles. She wasn't stopping him. I stepped outside, the summer heat swallowing me, but it couldn't burn away what I'd seen. Sophie so reckless, so alive in her desire. Nathan a man who knew exactly what he was doing, and me the fool who saw it all and did nothing. I walked to my car, the streetlights blurring, but I couldn't shake the image of her wrist in his hand, the way her eyes burned when she looked at him. I knew it wasn't over. It was just beginning. Days later, I saw Sophie at a coffee shop, her fingers wrapped around a mug, her eyes distant like she was chasing a memory she couldn't catch. She looked different, sharper, like a woman who'd tasted something forbidden and couldn't forget the flavor. I sat across from her, my heart heavy with what I'd seen. I wanted to ask about Nathan, about that night, about the way his touch lingered on her skin, but the words wouldn't come. She didn't bring it up either, just smiled, that half smile of hers, the one that hid more than it showed. "You okay?" I asked, my voice too careful. She shrugged, her blouse slipping down her shoulder, revealing a faint mark, a shadow maybe, or something else. "Just restless," she said, her voice low, like she was confessing to the coffee instead of me. "This house, it's too quiet sometimes, too empty." I knew she wasn't talking about the house. She was talking about him, Nathan, the way he filled every room, every silence with that slow burning intensity of his. I didn't push her. I couldn't. But I saw it in her eyes, the hunger, the guilt, the thrill of crossing a line she couldn't uncross. She leaned forward, her perfume sharp and sweet, and said, "You ever feel like you're falling into something you can't stop?" I nodded, though I didn't know what she meant. Not really. But I'd seen it that night, the way her body leaned toward his, the way her breath caught when his fingers grazed her wrist. It wasn't just desire. It was something deeper, something that clawed at you until you bled. That evening, I went back to their house. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see if the air still crackled, if the shadows still held their secrets. Sophie was in the kitchen, pouring wine, her dress thin enough to show the outline of her body. Nathan was there too, leaning against the counter, his eyes on her like she was the only thing in the world. Tom was upstairs asleep or working, oblivious to the storm brewing below. I stood in the doorway, invisible, my breath caught in my throat. The air was heavy, charged like the moment before lightning strikes. "You're quiet tonight," Nathan said, his voice low, rough, like he was tasting every word. Sophie didn't look at him, just swirled the wine in her glass. Her lips curved in a smile that wasn't quite a smile. "Maybe I'm just thinking," she said, her voice soft, teasing, but edged with something dangerous. She set the glass down, her movements slow, deliberate, like she knew exactly what she was doing to him, to herself. To me, standing there, watching it all unravel. He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her, his hand brushing the counter near her hip. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his voice a whisper, now intimate, like a secret meant only for her. She turned, her eyes meeting his, and I saw it, the fire, the hunger, the guilt that made it burn hotter. "You know what she said?" Her voice barely audible, her breath catching as his fingers grazed her arm. The touch was light, but it was everything, electric, forbidden, alive with want. I should have left. I should have turned away, but I was rooted, trapped by the weight of their desire. Sophie leaned into him, her body swaying like a flame drawn to the dark. His hand slid to her waist, his fingers splaying across her back, pulling her closer until there was no space left between them. Her breath hitched, her lips parting, and I saw the way her body responded, the way her hands gripped his shirt like she was holding on for dear life. "This is wrong," she whispered, but her voice was weak, her eyes betraying her. "Is it?" he murmured, his lips brushing her ear, his voice a low growl that sent a shiver down my spine. He didn't wait for an answer, just tilted her chin up, his thumb tracing her jaw. Their faces were inches apart, the air between them crackling with heat. She didn't pull away. She leaned in, her lips brushing his, soft at first, then harder, hungrier, like they were starving for each other. The kiss was a storm, a collision of want and guilt, and I couldn't look away. His hands moved, sliding down her sides, gripping her hips, pulling her against him. Her dress rode up, exposing the curve of her thigh, the lamplight catching the sheen of her skin. She gasped, her fingers digging into his shoulders, her body arching into his. It was raw, desperate, a dance of desire that left no room for reason. I felt the heat of it, the shame of it, the thrill of it like a pulse in my own veins. They were lost in each other, consumed by the fire they'd lit, and I was the witness, the one who saw it all and did nothing. The kitchen was a haze of shadows and lamplight, their bodies tangled in a rhythm that was both beautiful and wrong. Her breath was ragged, her hands clutching at him, her eyes closed as if she could block out the guilt. His touch was relentless, his fingers tracing every curve, every line, like he was claiming her. "Sophie," he whispered, his voice thick with need, and she answered with a moan, soft and broken, like she was surrendering to the inevitable. I turned away, my heart pounding, my skin hot. I slipped out of the house, the night air cold on my face, the darkness swallowing me whole. I didn't want to see what came next, but I knew. I knew the way their bodies would move, the way their breaths would tangle, the way the night would burn with their sin. Sophie, so reckless, so alive in her desire. Nathan, a man who'd taken what wasn't his. And me, the fool who saw it all and let it happen. The house stood silent behind me, its secrets locked inside its shadows darker than the night. The weeks that followed were a blur of whispers and glances, each one heavier than the last. Sophie didn't talk about it, but she didn't have to. It was written all over her, in the way her eyes lingered on the empty spaces where Nathan had been, in the way her fingers trembled when she poured her wine. I saw her less. But when I did, she was a shadow of herself, caught between the thrill of what she'd done and the guilt that clawed at her soul. Nathan was no better. I caught him once outside the house, his face tight, his eyes haunted, like a man who'd tasted paradise and knew he'd burn for it. Tom was around more, his presence, a stark contrast to the fire that had raged in his absence. Sophie and Nathan moved around him like ghosts, their touches careful, their smiles forced. But I saw it, the way their eyes met across the room, the way their fingers brushed when they passed each other, like they couldn't help themselves. It was a secret too big to hold, a fire too hot to contain. I wanted to tell Tom to shatter the lie, but I didn't. I was complicit, bound by what I'd seen, what I hadn't stopped. One night I went back to the house uninvited. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine, the moon low and heavy, casting shadows that danced like lovers. Sophie was in the backyard, her dress white and sheer, clinging to her like a second skin. Nathan was there too, his shirt open, his chest rising and falling too fast. They didn't see me, Didn't know I was there, hidden in the shadows of the porch. The air between them was alive, pulsing with the same heat I'd felt that first night, but now it was sharper, more desperate, like they knew the end was coming. "Sophie," he said, his voice low, raw, like a man pleading for salvation. She turned to him, her eyes wide, her lips parted, and I saw the war in her, the want, the shame, the need that burned hotter than both. "We can't keep doing this," he said, but his hand was already on her, his fingers tracing the curve of her neck, sliding down to her shoulder. She shivered, her body leaning into his touch, her breath shallow. "Then why don't you stop?" she whispered, her voice a challenge, a dare. He didn't answer, just pulled her closer, his hands gripping her waist, his lips brushing her throat. She gasped, her fingers tangling in his hair, her body arching against his. The moonlight painted them in silver, their shadows merging into one. It was beautiful and terrible, a dance of desire and destruction. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I was trapped, a witness to their sin, their surrender. His hand slid lower, pulling her dress up, exposing the curve of her thigh, the soft skin glowing in the moonlight. Her breath was ragged, her moans soft and desperate, like she was drowning in him. The night seemed to hold its breath, the world narrowing to the two of them, their bodies pressed together, their desire a living thing. "Nathan," she whispered, her voice breaking, and he answered with a kiss, deep and hungry, like he was trying to consume her. I saw the way her body responded, the way her hands clutched at him, the way her eyes closed as if she could block out the world. But the world was there, waiting, ready to judge. I left before it went further, my steps silent, my heart pounding. I didn't want to see the end, but I knew it was coming. Sophie and Nathan caught in a web they'd spun themselves, bound by desire and doomed by it. The house loomed behind me, its windows dark, its secrets heavier than ever. I drove away, the night swallowing me, but I couldn't escape the image of them, their bodies tangled, their breaths mingling, their sin burning brighter than the moon. So here I am telling you this story, my voice shaking with the weight of it. I saw it all and I did nothing. Maybe that's my sin too. If this hit you hard, if it stirred something in you, hit that like button, share it with someone who gets it, and subscribe for more stories that cut deep. Leave a comment, tell me what you'd have done, or don't just let it simmer. Check out the next video because, trust me, the shadows have more to say. Until then, keep watching, keep feeling, and don't look away.